Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources, your research, and, well, our own notes to really pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight. Today, we're cutting through quite a bit of noise surrounding a topic that's often misunderstood, yet it's profoundly impactful: blockchain technology. You've definitely heard the buzzwords, maybe seen the headlines about Bitcoin, but what is blockchain, really? And why should you, our curious listener, care about understanding its underlying mechanics and actually its surprising applications?
Yeah, this deep dive is really meticulously designed to demystify blockchain. We want to move beyond let's say, the sensational hype and the common misconceptions that often just obscure its true potential. We'll embark on a journey to explore its fundamental nature, unravel the intricate details of how it actually works, and uncover its astonishing real-world applications that extend far, far beyond mere digital currencies. Our mission, really, is to equip you with a robust foundational understanding, one that will allow you to see the future of digital trust in a whole new light.
Okay, and for this deep dive, we've pulled from a truly comprehensive set of sources. We've got What is Blockchain, Really, Without Tech Talk by DatzCrypto, alongside, well, a wealth of detailed academic papers, industry reports, and practical study guides. Our collective mission today is to arm you with a clear foundational understanding that might just spark a few aha moments, transforming your perception of the digital landscape and maybe the very future of trust itself. Let's peel back the layers. Okay, let's unpack this then. Before we can truly grasp what blockchain is, we absolutely need to address and clear up some, well, pretty persistent misunderstandings. Because let's be honest, the public conversation around blockchain has been incredibly noisy, often muddying the waters and creating significant barriers for anyone just trying to get an accurate grasp on this revolutionary technology. What are some of the most prevalent myths we really need to tackle head on?
That's the perfect place to start.
Yeah.
Many people's initial perception of blockchain is, well, either very limited or it's heavily skewed by sensational headlines, maybe based on outdated information. Resetting that understanding isn't just helpful, it's absolutely crucial to appreciating its broader potential and, frankly, its profound societal impact. These misconceptions, unfortunately, they act like blinders, right? Preventing people from recognizing blockchain's true power and versatility.
Right. Let's hit the first one, which is arguably the biggest myth out there. Myth number one: it's just a place to trade Bitcoin or some kind of magic money machine. The get-rich-quick stories have truly dominated public perception, leading so many people to dismiss blockchain as purely speculative.
You've hit on a really widespread and deeply ingrained confusion there. It's critical to understand that many people mistakenly conflate cryptocurrency exchanges, platforms where you buy and sell digital assets like Bitcoin, with the underlying blockchain technology itself. While these exchanges undeniably use blockchain, they are merely applications built on top of the infrastructure. Think of it like this. The internet is the vast underlying network of protocols and hardware. Then websites like Google or Amazon, those are specific applications built and operating on that internet. Bitcoin in this context is one incredibly powerful and, pioneering website or application running on its own blockchain. Unfortunately, the intense focus on speculation and investment returns has largely overshadowed the fundamental, really transformative nature of the underlying blockchain technology that makes Bitcoin possible in the first place.
So it's like confusing Amazon, the website, with the entire internet itself, or maybe Facebook with the internet. Bitcoin is simply one powerful application running on a blockchain, using its rules and structure, but it's certainly not the whole picture. The internet existed before Amazon, and blockchain exists beyond Bitcoin.
Exactly. Bitcoin uses blockchain, but blockchain isn't just Bitcoin. It's the foundational infrastructure, the protocol, the decentralized ledger system that enables Bitcoin and really countless other applications. And some of these applications don't even involve currency at all. To extend your analogy a bit further, confusing Bitcoin with blockchain is kind of like confusing email with the entire TCP/IP stack that makes the internet function. One is a specific use case, the other is the foundational plumbing,
Yeah.
much more encompassing and versatile.
Okay, that makes sense. Moving on to myth number two. It's a dark web tool or only for criminals. This one definitely stems from blockchain's earliest days, doesn't it? And it seems to have been a really tough reputation to shake off.
It absolutely does, and it's an unfortunate and persistent smear, really. Due to its early, albeit limited, adoption by illicit sites like, the original Silk Road, blockchain unjustly gained this undeserved reputation for primarily facilitating illegal activities. This early association, often amplified by media sensationalism, cast a long, lingering shadow. But what's truly fascinating and often overlooked is how dramatically this perception contrasts with its current reality. Legitimate uses of blockchain today far, far surpass these early negative associations. We're now seeing major established corporations like Walmart and Maersk, various government agencies looking at it for everything from land registries to voting systems, and even large regulated financial institutions like JP Morgan and Fidelity actively embracing blockchain technology. And they're using it for a wide array of legitimate, transparent, and undeniably beneficial purposes. Its evolution has just been remarkable.
So it's a bit like how the early internet also had its dark corners, right? It's anonymous forums, questionable sites, things we mostly don't associate with the entire internet today. You wouldn't dismiss the whole internet as just for criminals because some bad actors used it back in the day. The tool itself is neutral. It's the application that defines its standing.
Precisely. The technology itself is a neutral medium. Its application dictates its moral and societal standing. The overwhelming majority of its current utility is entirely legitimate and, in many cases, actually aims to enhance transparency, improve efficiency, and bolster security within existing legitimate frameworks. To cling to that outdated criminal association is really to miss the profound positive transformations it's enabling across the board.
Okay, next up, myth number 3. Blockchain is always anonymous. We hear about anonymous transactions all the time, especially in movies or news reports, particularly around cryptocurrencies. How true is that really? Is it completely hidden?
This is a crucial distinction that's often misunderstood, and it leads to a lot of confusion. In reality, most public blockchains, the kind that power cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum, are pseudonymous, not truly anonymous. So, while transactions are indeed visible to everyone on the network, you can see the unique alphanumeric addresses involved, the amounts transferred, the timestamp, all that. These addresses aren't directly tied to real-world identities by default. This means you can observe the activity, but you might not immediately know who's behind a specific address. It's like a username online. However, and this is absolutely crucial to understand, sophisticated on-chain analysis techniques, often combined with off-chain data, like transactions occurring through regulated exchanges that require KYC, know your customer information. Well, these methods can often connect blockchain activity back to real identities. When funds move into or out of these regulated platforms, or when specific patterns of behavior emerge over time, that veil of pseudonymity can definitely be lifted. So, the idea of absolute unassailable anonymity like you see in fiction, it's largely debunked by real-world forensic and investigative capabilities that are constantly evolving.
Which means it's not some foolproof hideout for illicit activities, unlike what some might imagine from those early stories. The transparent nature of the ledger, even if it's pseudonymous at first glance, actually provides a level of traceability. That traceability can eventually lead back to real-world entities, especially when interacting with the traditional financial system.
Not at all a foolproof hideout. The very transparency of the ledger, which is a core feature, provides a permanent, auditable trail. While it offers a degree of privacy, maybe better described as pseudonymity, it's far from the impenetrable anonymity some assume. This traceability is actually a significant advantage for legitimate businesses and regulatory bodies working to combat financial crime. They can follow the money in a way that's sometimes harder in traditional cash-based systems.
Okay. Myth number 4. It wastes too much energy. This is a big one, a really significant concern for many people, especially with ongoing global discussions around climate change and sustainability. Is Bitcoin's energy consumption, which we hear so much about the whole story here, or is there more nuance to it?
This is a very important and nuanced point, yeah. And it's one of the most frequently cited criticisms of blockchain, often used as a broad brush. While it's absolutely true that Bitcoin's original proof of work, PyW system, which involved that intense computational competition to secure the network, does consume substantial energy, it is by no means representative of the entire blockchain landscape. Think of it this way. Early computers were massive, inefficient machines, right? But technology evolves. Newer blockchain designs and ongoing innovations are rapidly and effectively addressing these energy concerns. Many modern blockchains, or even upgraded versions of older ones, now employ alternative consensus mechanisms. The most prominent of these is proof of stake, 2DLS. Here, validators stake or lock up a certain amount of cryptocurrency as collateral to participate in verifying transactions, rather than expending vast amounts of computing power trying to solve a puzzle. PUS systems typically require only a tiny fraction, often orders of magnitude less, like 99% less, of the energy consumed by PyW. Ethereum, for instance, famously transitioned from PyW to POS, drastically reducing its energy footprint. This clearly demonstrates that the technology is actively and rapidly evolving to address sustainability concerns. So the blanket statement that blockchain inherently wastes too much energy is really an outdated generalization. It fails to capture the innovation happening right now in the space.
So it's like saying all cars are gas guzzlers, because the Ford Model T was, even though electric vehicles and highly fuel-efficient cars are now common and becoming the standard, the technology is adapting and maturing.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. The innovation within the blockchain space is robustly driving solutions for these challenges. Much like any emerging technology, adapts and improves over time. To judge the entire field by one early, specific implementation like Bitcoin's POW would be a real disservice to the incredible engineering progress being made.
And finally, myth number 5, it's too complicated for regular people. This one, I think, is a major barrier for a lot of our listeners who might be curious but feel intimidated by the perceived technical complexity. It sounds like something only cryptographers or computer scientists can really wrap their heads around.
It's a very natural perception, and honestly, holds a kernel of truth. The underlying blockchain technology can indeed be incredibly complex. It involves advanced cryptography, distributed systems theory, intricate consensus algorithms. It's deep stuff. However, this is precisely where the analogy to the internet becomes so powerful and relevant again. The critical point is that the applications built on top of blockchain are becoming increasingly user-friendly and intuitive. The sources we looked at suggest a compelling future. Understanding blockchain will eventually be as seamless and, frankly, unnecessary for the average user as using the internet today without needing to comprehend its underlying protocols like TCP/IP or DNS. You interact with the user interface, right? Not the complex back-end plumbing. Think about how many layers of abstraction exist between you clicking a button on a web page and the data actually traveling across the globe. You don't need to know how that works to use it.
So you don't need to be a network engineer to send an email or stream a movie or even build a simple website today using tools like Squarespace or Wix. And soon, the goal is that you won't need to be a cryptographer or a distributed systems expert to use blockchain power applications for, say, voting or verifying credentials or making payments. The focus shifts from understanding the deep mechanics to just experiencing the utility.
Precisely. The ultimate goal of technological progress, generally speaking, is often to abstract away complexity from the end user. As the infrastructure matures, the focus will increasingly shift to the utility, the convenience, the intuitive interfaces. Which raises an important question for us, maybe. If the technology becomes effectively invisible, how much do we truly need to understand its inner workings to benefit from it? For the vast majority of future users, it will likely be about accessible, intuitive applications, much like your smartphone today. The underlying complexity will be managed by developers, allowing everyone else to simply use the powerful tools it enables without worrying about the how.
Okay, now that we've diligently cleared the air, dismantled some of those pervasive myths, let's get to the very heart of the matter. What is blockchain at its core, at its essence? Because this is where it gets really interesting. Once you grasp these fundamental ideas, everything else, its applications, its implications, starts to click into place. It feels like the bedrock of this whole technological shift.
Fundamentally, yes. Blockchain is an exceptionally unique digital ledger system. But it's not just any database. It's built on 4 revolutionary characteristics that fundamentally distinguish it from any traditional data management system we've used before. These characteristics are the bedrock of its transformative power. They collectively enable a new paradigm of digital trust.
All right, first up, it's a digital ledger. This sounds simple enough, almost self-explanatory, but what does that truly imply in the context of blockchain? How does it differ from, say, a traditional spreadsheet or my bank's database?
Right? At its most basic level, blockchain is a special type of database. You can think of it as a highly specialized record book, maybe. It stores information in discrete units called blocks. These blocks are then cryptographically linked together in a continuous chronological chain. Now, unlike a traditional database, which might store data in flexible tables, rows and columns that can be easily modified or updated, a blockchain records data in these immutable time-stamped blocks. You can truly visualize a block as a page in a digital notebook, but a very particular kind of page, one where information once written and confirmed is incredibly difficult to erase or alter. And crucially, each page is directly cryptographically connected to the one before it, ensuring a continuous verifiable history. It's essentially a distributed, append-only record-keeping system. You only add, you don't go back and change.
Okay, so a digital notebook where pages are effectively sealed once written and confirmed, that definitely sets it apart. Next characteristic, it's transparent. This seems like a truly massive shift from how many traditional records are kept, especially in finance or private institutions where things are often kept behind closed doors.
Indeed. This is one of its most defining and revolutionary features, particularly in public blockchains. The idea is that everyone participating in the network can see all transactions that occur. This creates unprecedented transparency in record keeping because the entire ledger is distributed and accessible, typically, to anyone on that network. Unlike traditional financial records kept behind closed doors by a single institution, where you really have to implicitly trust an institution to provide accurate records, blockchain transactions, once added to a block, are generally visible to all participants on the network. This radical transparency allows for easy audit and verification by anyone, anywhere, anytime, without needing special permission. What's truly fascinating here is that this transparency empowers collective oversight. It ensures integrity and reduces the need for intermediaries just to verify that something actually happened. It shifts trust from a specific entity to the verifiable data itself.
So it's like having a public, constantly updated ledger that anyone can inspect for themselves, rather than just trusting the bank or a single company to tell you what's actually on the books. That's a huge difference in how trust is established and maintained.
It truly is. It fundamentally moves the power of verification from a centralized, often opaque authority to the entire network of participants. This open verification is what builds confidence, even among parties who don't know or necessarily trust each other directly.
Okay, then we have immutable or permanent. This sounds incredibly absolute. Once something's on the blockchain, is it literally there to stay forever, like writing in digital stone? Is it impossible to change?
That's the core concept, yeah, and it's absolutely foundational to the trust blockchain provides. Once information is recorded and confirmed within a block, it becomes extremely difficult, computationally infeasible in most cases, to alter or delete. This characteristic creates what is effectively a permanent historical record. The immutability stems directly from that cryptographic linking of blocks we talked about. Any attempt to change historical records within a past block would immediately change that block's unique cryptographic fingerprint, its hash. This altered hash would then invalidate the reference in the subsequent block because that next block is pointing to the original hash. This broken link would, in turn, change that subsequent block's hash and so on, causing a mismatch that cascades down the entire chain. Such an alteration would be immediately obvious to everyone on the network because the cryptographic links would break. It makes it very hard to hack or fake any past transaction or data entry without the entire network noticing and rejecting the fraudulent version. It's designed to resist tampering with an almost unparalleled degree of robustness.
So no one, not even a system administrator or a powerful hacker, can secretly go back in time and change a record from last year or even last minute without that change being instantly flagged by the entire network as invalid.
That sounds like a self-auditing, self-correcting system almost.
Precisely. The system is designed such that any such attempt would break those crucial cryptographic links, immediately flagging the alteration to the entire network as invalid. This inherent resistance to modification is what makes blockchains so incredibly powerful for maintaining indisputable records, whether that's for financial transactions, supply chain data, digital identities, voting records, you name it.
And finally, the fourth characteristic, decentralized. This is another major buzzword frequently associated with blockchain, and it seems to be right at the heart of its revolutionary potential. What does decentralization truly imply for how the system operates, and why is it such a significant characteristic compared to, say, a typical company server? Decentralization means that instead of being controlled by a single company, government, or central authority, the blockchain is maintained by a vast, distributed network of computers nodes located all around the world. This is a profound and radical departure from traditional centralized systems like your bank's database or a corporate server, which invariably have a single point of control and therefore a single point of failure or censorship. In the blockchain, no single party has complete control over the system. Power, responsibility, and the data itself are distributed, significantly enhancing resilience. This eliminates the need for a trusted third-party intermediary to manage and validate the data. It's sometimes popularly likened to Google Docs for money or records, but with a crucial distinction. There isn't a single company like Google holding the master key or having ultimate control. Instead, control and governance are distributed among all participating computers or nodes. This makes it far more resistant to censorship, downtime, or malicious attacks focused on a single point.
So it's not housed on a single server in a single building that could crash or be hacked or be shut down by a government order. It's spread out globally, making it incredibly resilient. That inherent distribution of power sounds like a truly foundational shift in how we manage information.
Exactly. This distributed nature significantly increases its robustness and resistance to attack or censorship. The network can continue to operate even if a large number of nodes go offline temporarily. It makes it highly resilient and extremely difficult to manipulate unilaterally. This is a potential game changer for critical infrastructure and systems requiring high availability and integrity.
So what does this all mean when you combine these four characteristics? The digital ledger being transparent, immutable, and decentralized. What's the overarching impact of fusing these unique properties together?
This combination is precisely where the true transformative power of blockchain lies. This synthesis creates a system where people who don't know or inherently trust each other can still conduct business and interact with confidence. It fundamentally changes the traditional trust model. Instead of having to rely on a centralized institution, be it a bank, a government agency, a corporation, to be trustworthy and act honestly, the trust is now built directly into the system's protocol itself. This trust moves from a fallible, single intermediary to the robust, transparent, and cryptographically secured system validated by the network. It's a profound shift that opens up entirely new possibilities for secure, verifiable, and efficient interactions in the digital world. It really fosters a new era of what some call algorithmic trust, or trust through technology.
Okay, so that explains the what. Now let's dig into the how. How does this digital ledger actually work in practice? How do these blocks and chains we've discussed create such an incredibly secure system, one that's so difficult to tamper with, especially given that it's globally distributed and lacks a central controller? It still feels almost counterintuitive, for something so spread out to be so secure.
That's the beauty of its design, really. The security and integrity of blockchains stem directly from its unique data structure and the ingenious cryptographically secured way new information is added and verified by the network. It's not magic, but rather the result of very clever computer science, advanced cryptography, and distributed network coordination, all working together in concert.
Let's start with the anatomy of a block itself then. We've called it a page in a digital notebook. What specific pieces of information are actually on that page that make it so robust and secure?
Right, each block is indeed like a meticulously sealed and time-stamped page. It contains several key pieces of information, each critical to its integrity and the overall security of the chain. First, there's the transaction data. This is simply a list of all the transactions or other relevant information that occurred and were gathered during that block-specific time frame. For a cryptocurrency blockchain, this would be who sent money to whom and how much. For a supply chain blockchain, it might be changes to a product's location or ownership, maybe sensor data readings. Second, and crucially, it has a digital fingerprint, which is technically known as a hash. This isn't just any code, it's a unique fixed-size alphanumeric string that acts as a cryptographic summary of this specific block's entire contents. Think of a hash as a one-way function. You put data in, you get a unique hash out. But you cannot easily reverse engineer the original data just from the hash. The critical part here is that any tiny change to the block's data, even changing a single character or adding one comma, would result in a completely different and easily detectable hash. This hash serves as the block's unique identifier and an immediate integrity check. Third, this is where the chain truly forms. Each block contains a previous block reference. This is essentially the hash, the digital fingerprint, of the block that immediately preceded it in the chain. This direct cryptographic link is what binds the blocks together sequentially. And finally, there's usually a timestamp, which records the exact date and time the block was created and added to the chain, providing an indisputable chronological order to the entire ledger.
Okay, so each page is stamped with its precise time, lists its contents, has its own unique, unalterable digital ID, the hash, and crucially, has a cryptographic reference pointing directly back to the page before it. It's like a very specific kind of digital receipt book where every single receipt is securely linked to the one preceding it, creating an unbroken chain.
That's a perfect analogy, actually. And it helps illustrate the power of the chain connection, which really is the core security mechanism. Imagine that physical receipts book again, where maybe each new page includes a clear reference, perhaps even a summary of the previous page's information, ensuring an unbroken continuity. On a blockchain, this interdependency is foundational and cryptographically enforced. For example, block #2 contains all its new transactions, its own unique hash, and the block #1's hash. This means that block #2 cryptographically depends on block #1 being exactly as it was when block #2 was created. Now, here's why that's so powerful for security. If someone were to try and somehow alter information in block #1, maybe change a transaction amount, even by a single digit, it would immediately change block #1's unique hash. This changed hash would then invalidate the reference in block #2 because block #2 is still pointing to the original, now incorrect hash of block #1. This broken link would then ripple forward, changing block hashtag 2's hash, which would invalidate block hashtag 3's reference, and so on, cascading down the entire chain.
Wow. So trying to tamper with an old record is like trying to secretly tear out or alter a single page from the middle of that giant public receipt book where every single page is essentially signed by everyone, and every page points directly and verifiably to the one before it. It would be impossible to hide because every subsequent page would suddenly be pointing to a non-existent or incorrect previous page. The whole chain would instantly break, alerting everyone participating.
Precisely. The cryptographic links provide built-in, incontrovertible tamper evidence. This makes it nearly impossible to alter past records without it being immediately obvious to everyone maintaining and validating the network. This distributed verification, occurring across potentially thousands or even millions of computers globally, makes it exponentially more secure and transparent than any physical notebook or centralized database could ever be. Any attempted fraud or alteration is instantly detected and rejected by the consensus of the network, ensuring the integrity of the entire historical record remains intact.
That's an incredibly clever and robust system. But how do new blocks actually get created and added to this chain in the first place? Is this where the famous or maybe infamous concept of mining comes in, or is that just specific to certain blockchains like Bitcoin?
Yes, that's exactly where the process of mining, or more generally validating, comes into play, depending on the specific blockchain's consensus mechanism. Let's dive a bit deeper into how it works, using Bitcoin's proof of work, POW, as a classic example, since it's the one most people have heard of. Specialized computers on the network, known as nodes, or specifically miners in POW, are constantly listening for new, unconfirmed transactions broadcast across the network. They gather these pending transactions, bundle them together into a new proposed block. Then these miners compete intensely to solve a complex mathematical puzzle related to this proposed block.
What kind of puzzle are we talking about here? Is it like a super difficult Sudoku for these specialized computers, or is it something even more abstract and computational?
It's far more abstract than Sudoku, definitely. It's rooted in cryptography and probability. In a proof-of-work system like Bitcoin's, this puzzle essentially involves finding a specific number, called a nonce, which stands for number only used once. The goal is to find a nonce that, when combined with all the transaction data in the new block, plus the hash of the previous block, and then put through a specific cryptographic hashing algorithm, like SHA-256 for Bitcoin, produces a resulting hash that meets a certain extremely difficult target criterion. Typically, this target means the hash must start with a certain number of leading zeros. Finding this specific nonce is incredibly hard because there's no shortcut. You basically have to guess and check billions or trillions of possibilities per second. This work of repeatedly guessing nonces and hashing the block data requires significant computing power and electricity. It's essentially a computational lottery. The more computing power, hash rate, you dedicate, the more tickets you have per second, and the higher your statistical chance of being the first one to find the winning nonce. This arduous work is what ultimately validates the new block and secures the entire network by making it costly to attack.
Okay, so it's a brute force guessing game on a massive scale. And what happens when a computer finally solves this incredibly difficult puzzle? What's the payoff for them, and how does that new block actually get confirmed and added to the chain?
The moment a computer or miner successfully solves the puzzle, meaning they find that elusive nonce that produces a valid hash meeting the target difficulty for the new block, they immediately announce their solution, along with a completed block, to the entire network. Other computers, the regular nodes on the network, then quickly verify that the solution is correct. This verification step is crucial. It's designed to be relatively fast and easy to check. Just run the hash function once with the proposed nonce and data. It's much easier to verify the answer than it was to find it in the first place. If verified as correct by the majority of the network nodes, according to the protocol rules, the new block is officially accepted and added to the chain, becoming the latest immutable page in the shared ledger. And as a reward for their successful computational effort in securing the network and validating transactions, the winning computer receives a reward. This typically comes in two forms: newly minted cryptocurrency, like new Bitcoin being created, known as the block reward, and also a portion of the transaction fees paid by users whose transactions were included in that block.
So it's like this highly competitive global digital race where Thousands of powerful computers are constantly grinding away, trying to be the first to correctly verify and cryptographically seal off the next batch of transactions. And there's a substantial prize, both in new coins and fees, for the winner, which directly incentivizes them to expend all that computing power and energy, keeping the whole network secure and running.
That's a very accurate and insightful way to put it, yes. This intricate process serves two absolutely crucial purposes simultaneously. First, it securely and verifiably adds new transactions and data to the blockchain in a tamper-proof way, ordered chronologically. Second, and equally important, it economically rewards the participants for contributing their valuable computing resources, energy, and time to maintain the integrity, security, and decentralized nature of the entire network. These miners, or validators as we generally call them, essentially act as specialized decentralized notaries. They get paid for verifying and recording transactions in a cryptographically immutable manner, following the rules of the protocol. This creates a self-sustaining and incredibly robust ecosystem, built on cryptographic proof and economic incentives, rather than trust in the central party.
We've touched on this a little bit already, but let's really zoom in now on the fundamental differences. How does blockchain truly stack up against the traditional centralized systems we use every single day? Like your bank's internal database or a company's customer server or a government's registry system. Because it's clearly not just a slightly different way of doing the same thing. It seems to represent a really radical departure in philosophy and architecture.
This comparison is absolutely essential, yeah, because it truly highlights why blockchain represents a new paradigm, particularly for trust, security, and data management. It's a fundamental shift in how we approach record-keeping and interaction, especially in scenarios where multiple parties, who may not inherently trust each other, need to share and reliably verify information. We're fundamentally moving away from the need for centralized control towards distributed verification and consensus.
Okay, let's start with the most obvious differentiator, the control structure. How does a typical bank database fundamentally differ from a public blockchain like Bitcoin's or Ethereum's in terms of who's in charge? And what are the major implications of that difference?
Right. In traditional systems, control is almost always centralized. The data is controlled by a single company, institution, or database owner. This means that one entity has ultimate authority over the data. They decide who can access it, who can modify it, who can even delete it. This inherently leads to a single point of failure. If that central entity experiences a cyber attack or a catastrophic outage or even internal corruption or mismanagement, the entire system is potentially at risk. And users are forced to place implicit trust in that institution to act ethically and competently. In stark contrast, blockchain, especially public blockchain, is fundamentally decentralized. It's maintained by that vast distributed network of computers, nodes, located all around the world, with no single party having complete control. This is why it's so revolutionary. This decentralized approach creates unprecedented resilience against failure and corruption. It makes it exponentially harder to hack. An attacker would need to gain 51% control of the network's computing power in proof of work, or state value in proof of stake, to successfully manipulate the ledger. For large public blockchains, this is astronomically expensive and practically infeasible. This architecture also ensures rare potential downtime compared to traditional systems, which can suffer outages from server failures, power cuts, or natural disasters affecting a central location. It fundamentally moves the trust requirement from a fallible human institution to the robust, transparent, and mathematically verifiable system protocol itself.
So, in essence, with a bank, the bank dictates everything about its ledger. They own it, they control it. On a public blockchain, the entire network of participants collaboratively maintains and validates the ledger according to pre-agreed rules. That's a truly massive shift in power and responsibility, almost democratizing data control in a way.
It absolutely is. It distributes the power, and in doing so, significantly enhances the system's security, its resistance to censorship, and its overall resilience. It means no single entity can unilaterally change the rules of the game or arbitrarily alter the history.
Okay, next, let's look at data visibility and access. With my bank account, only I and the bank can really see my detailed transactions, and that's usually considered a good thing for privacy. What's the paradigm with a blockchain here? Is everything just out in the open?
Traditional systems typically have highly restricted public access. Data visibility is tightly limited, usually confined only to authorized personnel or specific users with login credentials. Your bank statement is private for good reason, accessible only to you and the bank under specific circumstances. Blockchain, however, particularly public blockchains, creates unprecedented transparency. Generally speaking, everyone participating in the network or even just observing it from the outside can see all the transactions that occur. Now, as we discussed, most public blockchains are pseudonymous, meaning transactions are linked to those alphanumeric addresses rather than real-world names. But all the transaction data itself, like amounts, sender-receiver addresses, timestamps, is openly visible on the public ledger. This radical transparency is actually crucial because it allows people who don't know or inherently trust each other to conduct business with confidence, as everyone can independently verify the information themselves. The ability to audit and verify information without requiring special permission or needing to trust a central intermediary creates a level of trust and accountability that is incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to achieve in traditional closed, opaque systems. It shifts from privacy achieved through obscurity to integrity achieved through transparency of data, coupled with pseudonymity for the actors involved.
So it's a public ledger where the records themselves are transparent and verifiable by anyone, but the identities behind those records are somewhat masked by pseudonyms, giving you a form of privacy without sacrificing the integrity and auditability of the data. It's an interesting balance, a different approach to trust and privacy.
Exactly. It's primarily about transparency of the record and the process of validation, not necessarily full transparency of personal identity, unless a specific application is designed for that purpose, like maybe a blockchain-based identity system, paradoxically. This design choice is fundamental to enabling those trustless interactions where you trust the code and the consensus, not the counterparty.
And what about record alterability and permanence? You mentioned immutability. In traditional systems, I imagine changes can be made, right?
Yeah.
Mistakes can be corrected, maybe records updated by administrators. What's the story with blockchain? Can you never fix a mistake?
This characteristic is a cornerstone of blockchain's integrity and its value proposition. In traditional systems, yes, past records can indeed be easily edited or changed internally by administrators or database owners who have the appropriate permissions. If a mistake is made, or even if deliberate fraud is attempted by an insider, it can be relatively simple for someone with the right access level to alter a record, often without any immediate external detection or audit trail. In stark contrast, once information is recorded and confirmed on a blockchain, usually after several subsequent blocks are added, making it even more computationally expensive to undo, it becomes extremely difficult to alter or delete, creating that permanent historical record. It is nearly impossible to alter past records, for the reasons we discussed involving the cryptographic chaining of hashes. If you were to try and alter an old block, its unique digital fingerprint changes. This then invalidates the hash reference stored in the next block, which in turn changes its hash, invalidating the reference in the block after that, and so on. Any tampering becomes immediately obvious to everyone on the network, because the cryptographic links would break, signaling an invalid or fraudulent chain. This characteristic provides built-in tamper evidence, making it exceptionally hard to hack or fake historical records. It ensures that the record can be trusted to remain unchanged and can be verified by the community, essentially forever. Fixing mistakes usually involves adding a new transaction that corrects or reverses the previous one, leaving the original incorrect transaction still visible, but superseded, maintaining that perfect audit trail.
So it's not just difficult to alter. It's cryptographically designed to flag any attempt at alteration immediately and invalidate the entire subsequent chain history from that point forward. That sounds incredibly robust and offers a level of data integrity and auditability that's just unseen in most traditional systems.
It is. It's a self-validating, self-auditing record system by its very design. This is precisely why it's so powerful and attractive for scenarios requiring absolute historical integrity thinking, legal documents, intellectual property filings, voting records, or financial audit trails, where proving something didn't change is as important as proving it happened.
Which leads us directly to the trust requirement. In a traditional system, like with my bank, I implicitly trust the institution. I trust them to keep my money safe, keep my records accurate, keep my data private. What's the fundamental difference in the trust model with blockchain? You mentioned trustless.
This is perhaps the most profound and philosophically significant distinction. Traditional data management systems absolutely require users to trust the institution or administrators that control the system. Your trust is placed squarely in a central authority, a corporation, a government, a bank, and you have to believe they will be honest, secure, and reliable. Blockchain, however, is often described as trustless. Now, that doesn't mean there's no trust involved anywhere, but rather that trust is built directly into the system's protocol itself through mathematics and cryptography. This trust isn't placed in a potentially fallible individual or a single company. Instead, it's inherent in the mathematical and cryptographic rules that govern the network, combined with its transparent, immutable, and decentralized architecture. This fundamental difference means that transactions and records can be verified and trusted without relying on a central authority like a bank or government intermediary. It enables confident interactions and transactions between parties who may not know or trust each other personally, fostering a new model of peer-to-peer relationships mediated by code. It's a paradigm shift from institutional trust to algorithmic trust, validated by the collective network consensus.
And the data structure itself, we've talked extensively about blocks and chains, this linear structure. How does that compare structurally to how data is typically organized in a standard relational database you might find in any company today?
Traditional databases, especially relational ones, typically structure data in highly organized tables with rows and columns, much like a meticulously arranged set of interconnected spreadsheets. They're designed for incredibly efficient querying, rapid data retrieval based on various criteria, and relatively easy modification or updating of specific records. Blockchain, on the other hand, stores information sequentially in those blocks that are linked together in a specific linear chain. Each block contains a batch of transaction data, its own unique cryptographic hash, its digital fingerprint, and crucially, a reference, the hash, to the previous block in the sequence. This chain connection, where each block cryptographically relies on its predecessor for its validity, is precisely what makes blockchain so secure and immutable. Any attempt to alter data in one block would change its hash, which would then invalidate the hash reference stored in the next block, and so on down the line, making any tampering immediately detectable by the entire network. This linear chain structure fundamentally prioritizes security and verifiable historical order over flexible querying or easy modification of past records.
So it's like a continuous, unbreaking digital scroll or a digital historical record book, where each new entry not only adds information, but also cryptographically confirms the validity and integrity of every single previous entry before it. It creates this unbroken, verifiable lineage of data from the very beginning.
Exactly. It's a linear, cryptographically secured history that is incredibly robust against retrospective alteration. This makes it ideal for audit trails and maintaining verifiable records, where proving the sequence and integrity of past events is paramount.
Finally, let's talk about speed and efficiency. Traditional databases are usually designed for incredible speed and efficiency, often handling millions of transactions or queries per second in optimized environments. What about blockchain? Can it compete in that regard? Is it fast?
You're absolutely right. Traditional centralized databases generally excel at efficient data storage and retrieval. They are typically far faster and much more efficient for routine, high-volume data operations when managed within a single, trusted, centralized system. Blockchain, by its very distributed nature and its reliance on network-wide consensus mechanisms, is generally slower and considerably more resource-intensive. This is particularly true for large public blockchains like Bitcoin that require widespread network verification and computationally expensive consensus mechanisms like proof of work to achieve security and decentralization. The conclusion here is vital for understanding its appropriate use cases. Blockchain is not inherently better than traditional databases for all purposes, nor is it intended as a universal replacement. It's a specialized tool designed for a different set of problems. It shines spectacularly in situations where multiple parties need to share and trust information without relying on a single central authority. It is specifically optimized for transparency, security, and decentralized trust, making it the ideal choice for scenarios where data integrity, a verifiable shared truth, and resistance to censorship are the absolute top priorities, even if that means accepting a potential trade-off in raw speed or immediate transaction throughput compared to highly optimized centralized systems.
Okay, so it's definitely not a universal replacement for all databases then. It's more like a powerful, specialized new tool in the toolbox, designed for specific, critical problems where trust, immutability, and decentralization are the absolute priorities. It's truly about choosing the right technological tool for the right job rather than seeing it as a silver bullet.
Precisely. It fills a crucial gap for shared, verifiable, and tamper-proof record keeping. It creates a common source of truth where multiple potentially distrusting parties need to interact confidently without needing a central arbiter or intermediary. It provides a level of integrity, transparency, and decentralization that traditional systems simply cannot offer without adding significant layers of complexity, cost, or inherent counterparty risk. It's fundamentally a tool for building trust in environments where trust is scarce or expensive to establish through traditional means.
All right, this is where it gets really exciting for you, our listener. We've talked a lot about what blockchain is, how it works, and how it fundamentally differs from the systems we're used to. But how is it actually being used right now? How is it solving real problems, creating tangible value, and extending far beyond just the world of buying and selling cryptocurrency? Because that's where the rubber truly meets the road, right? Where the theoretical gives way to the practical impact.
Indeed. Blockchain's transformative power is most vividly seen in its practical, real-world applications. These deployments are actively addressing long-standing inefficiencies, inherent trust deficits, and systemic vulnerabilities across a really wide spectrum of industries. It's a testament to its evolution from, a theoretical promise outlined in a white paper to a foundational technology delivering tangible solutions today.
Let's start with global payments. I know just from personal experience, and I'm sure many listeners do too, that sending money internationally, whether it's for business invoices or sending money home to family, can be a frustratingly slow, opaque, and often expensive headache. What exactly is the core problem that blockchain is trying to solve in this particular area?
Yeah, the problems with traditional international transfers are multifaceted and pretty deeply entrenched in the legacy banking system. They often take a frustratingly long 3 to 5 business days to actually clear and settle. This is primarily due to the complex web of correspondent banks and intermediaries involved in the traditional SWIFT messaging system. Your money hops between multiple banks, each taking time. These transfers typically involve high fees, often ranging from 3 to 7% of the total amount, sometimes even more for smaller amounts. Each intermediary bank along the path takes a cut, which significantly erodes the value of the transfer, especially for people sending small, regular amounts like remittances. They also have limited operating hours, right? They adhere strictly to banking holidays and standard business hours in different time zones, meaning you often can't send money instantly whenever you need to, especially on weekends or holidays. And finally, they involve complex compliance requirements and often significant paperwork or hurdles, leading to friction, potential delays, and sometimes even outright rejection of transfers.
Wow. Okay, so slow, expensive, opaque, inconvenient hours, and sometimes complex. How does blockchain fundamentally disrupt and hopefully fix that outdated system?
The blockchain solution, particularly using certain cryptocurrencies or specialized blockchain payment rails, offers a truly dramatic improvement across basically all those dimensions. It enables transfers in minutes, not days, sometimes even seconds, because that often cuts out many of those traditional intermediaries. Fees are typically dramatically lower, often under 1%, sometimes just fractions of a cent, as transactions can go more directly from sender to receiver on a decentralized network without multiple banks taking fees. It facilitates a direct sender-to-receiver path, effectively creating a peer-to-peer global payment rail, reducing counterparty risk and complexity. Crucially, blockchain networks operate 24/7, 365 without holidays or banking hours, meaning you can send money anytime, anywhere in the world, and it will be processed almost instantly according to the network's block confirmation times. This is especially valuable, as you mentioned, for remittances, where individuals send money home to their families in other countries. Every dollar saved on fees and every minute saved on transfer time makes a profound and immediate difference in people's lives. It really has the potential to democratize access to global financial flows.
Just imagine sending money across the world almost instantly, maybe while you're watching this deep dive, at a tiny fraction of the traditional cost without ever worrying about whether the banks are open or if it's a holiday. That's a profound game changer for so many people, especially the millions relying on remittances just to support their families. And we have concrete examples of this in action today, right? It's not just theoretical.
Absolutely. Bitcoin, of course, was the original, the pioneering cryptocurrency that fundamentally demonstrated this capability for borderless, peer-to-peer value transfer without traditional intermediaries. It proved the concept was possible. Then you have digital assets like XRP, associated with Ripple, which is specifically designed for fast, extremely low-cost cross-border payments. It's actively being used and tested by a number of financial institutions looking to modernize their international settlement infrastructure, moving away from slow Nostro Vostro accounts. And there's Stellar, XLM, which focuses on connecting diverse financial institutions, payment providers, and fintech companies to offer low-cost financial services, particularly aiming to serve the unbanked and underbanked populations globally by making cross-asset and cross-border payments more efficient. These are not just theoretical concepts anymore. They are active networks processing billions of dollars in transaction value, challenging the old ways.
That's truly incredible potential there. Okay, let's pivot to another major area, supply chains. This is another domain that sounds incredibly complex, often global, and prone to inefficiencies, errors, fraud, and issues like costly product recalls. What are the chronic, long-standing challenges in supply chain management that blockchain is poised to solve?
Modern supply chains are astonishingly complex. They often span multiple continents, involve dozens of different handlers and intermediaries, various logistics providers, shipping, trucking, air freight, and still rely heavily on extensive, often disparate, paper-based documentation or siloed digital systems that don't talk to each other. This labyrinthine complexity creates several acute, costly problems. First, difficulties in tracing contaminated products rapidly and accurately. This can lead to widespread public health crises, brand damage, and incredibly expensive blanket recalls when the source can't be pinpointed quickly. Second, pervasive counterfeiting and fraud, which impacts everything from high-value luxury goods and electronics to critical items like pharmaceuticals and aircraft parts. It's a massive global problem. Third, deeply inefficient paper-based processes or incompatible digital systems that introduce significant delays, errors, and administrative overhead. And fourth, often a general lack of transparency and trust between different partners in the chain who don't necessarily share a single, verifiable source of truth for their transactions, product movements, or compliance data.
So, getting a product, say a head of lettuce or a vital medicine, from its origin point all the way to its final destination, and knowing with absolute certainty exactly where it's been, who handled it, what conditions it was kept under, and if it's legitimate. That sounds like a monumental and often impossible task with traditional methods. How does blockchain provide a robust, trustworthy solution to these deep-seated challenges?
This is where blockchain truly shines in a critical, non-financial context, leveraging its core properties. Companies like Walmart, using IBM's Food Trust platform built on Hyperledger Fabric, and global shipping giant Maersk, with their TradeLens platform, also initially developed with IBM, are actively implementing blockchain solutions. They use it to track products right from their point of origin, be it a farm, a factory, or a mine, all the way through processing, shipping, distribution, and finally to the retail shelf. This enables a complete, immutable history of each product, recording every single touchpoint, transfer of custody, and relevant piece of data, like temperature logs for sensitive goods, on a shared, tamper-proof ledger accessible to permission participants. The impact on areas like food safety, as mentioned in the sources, is profound. Blockchain can reduce the time to trace the source of contamination from days or even weeks down to mere seconds. This allows for immediate, targeted identification of affected batches and locations, potentially saving lives during foodborne illness outbreaks and preventing overly broad, wasteful recalls. Beyond safety, it helps in reducing waste by improving inventory management and reducing spoilage, significantly improving safety and verifying product authenticity against counterfeits, and providing unprecedented visibility and trust across the entire supply chain for all stakeholders, from the initial producers right through to the end consumers who might be able to scan a QR code and see the product's journey.
Wow. So, in critical applications like food safety alone, blockchain can potentially reduce the time to trace contamination from days to seconds. That's not just an efficiency gain, that's literally a life-saving capability in some instances. It completely transforms how we can respond to public health crises linked to food. That's a really powerful demonstration of its utility beyond finance.
Absolutely. The ability to instantly and reliably verify the origin, the journey, and the integrity of a product creates unprecedented accountability and safety across the board. This translates across various industries. In pharmaceuticals, it helps ensure drug authenticity and prevents dangerous counterfeits from entering the supply chain. In luxury goods, it verifies provenance and combats fakes. In aerospace and automotive, it tracks the life cycle of critical parts, ensuring safety and compliance. Examples here include dedicated platforms like VeChain, which is a public blockchain platform specifically designed and widely adopted for supply chain management, anti-counterfeiting, and product verification, often using IoT integration, and also enterprise solutions like IBM Hyperledger Fabric, which provides the foundation for many permissioned, industry-specific blockchain consortia focused on supply chain tracking and secure data sharing among business partners. These aren't just niche pilot projects anymore. They are large-scale, impactful implementations that showcase the technology's inherent versatility and its ability to solve real business problems.
So it's really clear from these examples, global payments, complex supply chains, that major banks, governmental agencies looking at things like land titles or voting, and massive corporations like Walmart and IBM, they are actively implementing blockchain for an incredibly diverse range of purposes now, far, far beyond just facilitating digital currency speculation. It really demonstrates its versatility and broad applicability as a foundational technology, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It really underscores the point that blockchain is a general-purpose technology, much like the internet itself was, or like relational databases became. Its potential utility is vast. It's capable of addressing a wide range of complex problems where trust, transparency, immutability, and decentralization are critical requirements for sharing data, verifying claims, and executing transactions or processes involving multiple parties. Its profound utility is far broader than its initial, highly visible application in speculative cryptocurrency markets might suggest to the casual observer. Those crypto applications were just the first killer app that got widespread attention.
Okay, let's circle back then and try to really clarify the relationship between blockchain and cryptocurrencies one more time, because they are so often used interchangeably in the media and just in general public discourse, leading to a lot of confusion, but we know they're not the same thing. So what's the fundamental distinction that you, our listener, truly need to grasp to understand this ecosystem properly?
Yes, this is perhaps the critical point to internalize. It helps clarify why so many diverse industries, from logistics and healthcare to entertainment and finance, are investing heavily in blockchain technology itself, even if they have absolutely zero interest in speculative crypto assets or trading them on public exchanges. Understanding this key distinction really unlocks the broader utility and potential of the underlying technology.
Okay, break it down for us as simply as possible. What's the main defining difference between blockchain, the technology, and cryptocurrency, the application?
Simply put, the relationship is one of infrastructure to application. Blockchain is the underlying technology. It's the foundational distributed ledger system, the network protocol that enables secure, transparent, and immutable record keeping. Cryptocurrencies, on the other hand, are specific applications or use cases built on top of that blockchain technology. Think of Bitcoin, Ether, XRP. These are digital assets enabled by their respective blockchains. This distinction is crucial. You can absolutely have a blockchain without any associated public cryptocurrency. For instance, many private or enterprise-specific chains used by corporations for internal logistics tracking, secure record-keeping between partners, or intercompany settlements don't have a publicly traded coin. These blockchains might use internal digital tokens for accounting or access control, but they aren't cryptocurrencies in the public market sense. However, and this is the inverse relationship, cryptocurrencies cannot exist without blockchain. They rely entirely on its underlying infrastructure to function, to provide their security, their immutability, their transaction validation, and their decentralization. The blockchain is the necessary foundation for crypto.
So to use that analogy again, which seems really helpful, think of blockchain as being like the internet protocol itself, like TCP/IP. That's the fundamental plumbing, the backbone that allows data to move reliably. While cryptocurrencies are like specific websites or applications built on that protocol, like Google or email or online banking. So the internet can exist without any one particular website, but no website can exist without the underlying internet infrastructure. That's a remarkably clear and powerful way to frame it.
It's the most apt and widely accepted analogy, I think, precisely because it encapsulates that hierarchical relationship so well. Understanding this distinction helps industries, policymakers, and individuals alike see beyond the often speculative and volatile headlines associated with cryptocurrencies and instead recognize the profound, practical, and potentially enduring utility of the blockchain technology itself as a general-purpose innovation. It allows us to separate the signal from the noise, really, and focus on the fundamental value proposition of the tech.
Okay, this brings us naturally to another extremely important distinction within the broader blockchain world, the difference between public versus private blockchains. How do these differ in their fundamental design, their purpose, their access control? And how does cryptocurrency typically fit into the picture for each type? Because it sounds like they serve very different needs.
Yes, this distinction is absolutely crucial for understanding the incredibly diverse range of applications for blockchain technology and why different organizations or communities choose very different implementation models based on their specific goals and requirements. First, let's look at public blockchains. These are characterized by being completely open to anyone to participate. Anyone with an internet connection can typically download the software, run a node, view the ledger, and send transactions. They generally offer complete transparency of transactions, meaning anyone can view the entire history of the ledger, and crucially, no permission is needed to join or interact with the network in a basic way, like sending transactions or deploying smart contracts on platforms like Ethereum. Examples you're likely familiar with include Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Cardano, the XRP ledger, and many others. These public chains fundamentally prioritize decentralization and censorship resistance above all else, often making trade-offs in terms of raw transaction speed or data privacy to achieve these goals. These are the types of blockchains that power most widely known: publicly traded cryptocurrencies, relying on a global network of independent validators or miners to maintain their integrity through consensus.
So the blockchain that Bitcoin runs on or that Ethereum runs on is truly public and open in the sense that anyone, anywhere can potentially join, run a node, help validate transactions if they meet the criteria, or build applications on top of it. It's designed as a truly global, permissionless system aiming for maximum openness and neutrality.
Precisely. That's their core design philosophy. Optimize for trust minimization through decentralization and broad open participation. Then we have private blockchains, sometimes called permission blockchains or consortium blockchains. These are fundamentally different in their access and control model. They are limited to authorized participants only. You need specific permission, usually granted by a central administrator or a governing consortium, to access the network, view data, or submit transactions. It's a closed, walled garden ecosystem. They're typically controlled by one organization, like a single company using it internally, or a consortium of collaborating organizations, like several banks or companies in the supply chain working together. Examples here include enterprise-grade blockchain platforms like IBM Hyperledger Fabric, R3 Corda, popular in finance, and sometimes customized versions of other platforms configured for private use. These private chains generally prioritize efficiency, transaction speed, privacy for sensitive data, and compliance with existing business processes and regulations over pure decentralization or censorship resistance.
And crucially, these private blockchains often don't involve public, widely traded cryptocurrencies. While they might use internal digital tokens for specific internal accounting purposes, managing access rights, or facilitating processes within the permission network, these tokens are not meant for public speculation or trading on open markets. Their value, if any, is derived purely from their utility within that specific closed business ecosystem.
Right. So a company like Walmart, which we mentioned earlier, using blockchain for supply chain tracking with its suppliers, would likely use a private permissioned blockchain. It's still decentralized among its trusted partners or internal divisions, sharing that immutable ledger, but it's not globally accessible to the public, and there probably isn't a Walmart coin being traded on crypto exchanges involved. It's about creating a shared, secure, efficient ledger for a specific business network.
Exactly, that's a perfect example. Both public and private types serve distinctly different purposes, and they showcase the immense versatility and adaptability of the underlying blockchain technology itself, regardless of whether a public, widely traded cryptocurrency is involved or not. One architecture, public, is built for global, permissionless consensus and censorship resistance, making it ideal for open value transfer systems or truly decentralized applications. The other, private permissioned, is designed for controlled, efficient, and compliant enterprise solutions where privacy, scalability, and integration with existing systems within a defined group are the paramount concerns. What's truly fascinating here is seeing how the core principles, immutability, cryptographic security, distributed record keeping, can be effectively adapted to vastly different levels of access control and governance models, illustrating the technology's broad applicability across the spectrum from fully open to fully closed systems.
Okay. So we've taken this pretty deep dive into blockchain now. We've gone from dispelling common myth to unraveling its core mechanics like blocks and hashes and consensus and exploring some really exciting real-world applications beyond crypto. But let's bring it back home. Why should you, our listener, really care about understanding these fundamentals, especially if maybe you're not planning on trading crypto actively or becoming a blockchain developer yourself? What's the personal relevance of getting your head around this stuff?
That's a great question, and the answer is becoming increasingly clear. Understanding blockchain fundamentals is becoming more and more important for individuals, for professionals across many fields, and for businesses alike, simply because it represents a foundational technological innovation. It's still in its relatively early stages of adoption, maybe like the internet was in the mid to late 1990s. To ignore it completely might be akin to ignoring the rise of the internet back then, or perhaps even ignoring the advent of the personal computer in the 80s. It's poised to reshape significant parts of our digital world, and understanding it, even at a basic level, offers several key advantages.
Okay, so for starters, if someone does choose to participate in the crypto or blockchain investment space, even peripherally, this understanding can lead to smarter investment decisions.
Absolutely, that's a very direct benefit. If you're considering putting any of your hard-earned money into specific cryptocurrencies or broader blockchain-related projects or companies, understanding the underlying fundamentals, what problem does this project actually solve? How does its consensus mechanism work? Is its token necessary or just bolted on? What's its real utility? It helps you evaluate those projects based on real utility versus pure hype. It empowers you to hopefully distinguish between genuine technological innovation with potentially sustainable value and, frankly, fleeting speculative bubbles driven by marketing, or even worse, outright scams. This foundational knowledge is your best defense against losing money on projects with no substance.
And crucially, building on that, this knowledge offers significant scam protection. The crypto space, unfortunately, partly due to its complexity and the hype, has been a real breeding ground for bad actors and various kinds of fraudulent schemes preying on people who don't understand the basics.
You're absolutely right. Unfortunately, the early stages of almost any transformative technology tend to attract opportunists and scammers. Basic blockchain knowledge helps you quickly identify common red flags. It helps you understand the realistic capabilities and limitations of the technology and avoid the numerous scams out there, from classic Ponzi schemes dressed up in crypto jargon to sophisticated phishing attacks trying to steal your private keys to fake initial coin offerings, ICOs, for projects that don't exist. Just knowing how public blockchains work, for example, understanding that transactions are generally irreversible, or that no one legitimate will ever ask for your private keys, can help you spot unrealistic promises of guaranteed high returns or phishing attempts. It's a powerful shield against manipulation and financial loss.
Okay. Beyond investing and protection, you also mentioned significant career opportunities emerging as this technology starts to permeate more traditional industries.
That's a major point, yes. Blockchain-related skills, and this ranges widely from core software development and cryptography to business analysis, understanding blockchain use cases, to legal expertise in smart contracts and regulation, to supply chain specialists who understand blockchain integration. These skills are increasingly in high demand across diverse industries, not just tech startups. Whether you're currently working in finance, logistics, healthcare, law, intellectual property management, media, or even government services, understanding the basics of blockchain and its potential implications for your field positions is significantly ahead of the curve. This technology is starting to integrate into more sectors. It's a rapidly growing field with a reported substantial talent gap, creating exciting new professional pathways and opportunities for those who take the initiative to learn.
And finally, and perhaps most importantly in the long run, this understanding equips you simply with feature readiness. This feels like it could be a monumental shift, perhaps akin to needing to understand the basics of personal computing in the 1980s or how the internet worked in the 1990s to stay relevant. It's about adapting to the evolving digital landscape we all live in.
Precisely. I think that's the broadest and maybe most compelling reason. As blockchain becomes integrated into more and more aspects of business and daily life, basic literacy in this technology will become increasingly valuable, potentially almost as indispensable as basic internet literacy is today. You don't need to be an expert, but understanding the concepts helps you navigate the world. The sources we reviewed strongly suggest that blockchain is still in its nascent stages, truly comparable perhaps to where the internet was in the mid-1990s. This implies that widespread adoption and deeper integration are not just possibilities, but strong probabilities over the next decade or two. It will likely affect a vast array of aspects of daily life, from how we manage finance and interact with banks, to how goods move through supply chains, potentially to how we verify voting records, manage our digital identity securely, and even how creative works or intellectual property is authenticated and tracked. What's more, as we discussed, blockchain applications are becoming increasingly user-friendly, meaning you likely won't need to be a technical expert to benefit from them directly.
But understanding the underlying principles, why it's secure, why it's different, will empower you to navigate this future more effectively, make informed choices, and maybe even leverage it. The more you understand, the less you'll fear the unknown or be misled by hype, and the better positioned you'll be to potentially benefit from this profound technological revolution. It's really about empowering yourself as a citizen and a participant in the evolving digital future.
Wow, okay. What a journey we've been on in this deep dive. We went from patiently dispelling some of those really pervasive myths, the magic money machines, the tool just for criminals, to meticulously breaking down how things like cryptographic hashes and consensus mechanisms create this, well, almost unbreakable chain of trust. And then seeing how this technology is literally being used today in areas like supply chains to trace contamination in mere seconds, potentially saving lives. It's abundantly clear that blockchain is so much more than just digital money or Bitcoin. It feels like a truly foundational shift in how we might manage trust, data, and value in the digital realm going forward.
Indeed. I think at its absolute core, it's about pioneering a new, verifiable, and decentralized way to establish and maintain trust in a digital age. And in doing so, it fundamentally alters our traditional reliance on intermediaries, banks, lawyers, escrow services, platform providers, to validate things for us.
This inherent capability to create trust through code and consensus has the profound potential to transform virtually any system or process that requires secure, transparent, and verifiable record keeping, whether that's for financial transactions, digital identities, physical asset tracking, or intellectual property rights.
That's a truly powerful and definitely thought-provoking idea to leave you with, our listener, as we wrap up this deep dive. Consider this question. If blockchain technology can successfully build inherent trust directly into a digital system, removing the need for a central authority to arbitrate or verify truth, what other vast areas of our lives, areas currently reliant on layers upon layers of intermediaries and centralized institutions, might see similar radical transformations in the coming years? What long-standing institutions, maybe from legal systems and contract enforcement to governance models and democratic processes, might look profoundly different a decade or two from now because of this fundamental shift in how we establish and distribute trust in a digital world? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.